Hello everybody, welcome to this Viking EMEA webinar. My name is Gill
My name is Marcel Ruesink.
and we're here today to talk about the new EN 14972 standard for water mist systems, actually a series of standards. We're going to talk a little bit about the background, the standard contains, what it covers, and how that might benefit the industry.
Sounds great, Chris.
So Marcel, lots of people from Viking were involved in the drafting of this standard.
Yeah.
It's a European standard, including yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about the background, where it came from, why have we written this standard?
Yeah, it's a good question. So water mist is already in the market since several decades. We have a technical document already available since 2008. But the industry, the stakeholders actually from the industry, they felt like because of the different solutions per application, it was all scattered around, and it was for the user not always easy to find, in the manual where to start and where to end in terms of design, installation, operation and maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt we need to bundle it and structure it.
Yeah.
To make it more transparent for the market and make it user friendly. So that's what we have been doing a couple of years.
Yeah, I think particularly for the end users and the specifiers, it has been confusing and difficult to compare one system with another.
Correct.
So looking at the content and particularly the scope of the standard, we can see that it covers both low and high pressure systems. It covers local application, total flooding, area coverage systems, a bit more like a sprinkler type design. But also there's heavy reliance, let's say, or there's a lot of information in the standard about the design, installation, operation and maintenance document.
Yes, the Dion we call it. Huh?
Yeah. Why is that in there? That's quite different to other similar standards.
Yeah, correct. Because if you look at the sprinklers, for instance, we are sprinklers from origin, so that's why we always refer to it.
Yeah.
So sprinklers is a pre-descriptive standard. So it talks about, a K factor, and then depending on the occupancy or the hazard, you have a certain pressure or density and an area per sprinkler head. But with water mist is different.
Yeah.
So, and that has been growing for a couple of years. So a lot of manufacturers, they have their high pressure system or their low pressure system for different applications. And they used to go with a certain kind of philosophy. So part of the standard now allows this philosophy via the Dion.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is also pre-descriptive in terms of how should a system look like. What makes it good or what makes it bad. So that's in there prescriptive, but still it allows kind of a flexibility, for the manufacturers per application depending on,
Yeah, and the flexibility is important because each water mist system is different. And we wanted a document that didn't exclude existing systems that are already on the market. So by putting those requirements on the Dion, that allows those systems to still be assessed.
Yes.
And of particular importance, as we know in our industry, are third-party approvals.
Yes.
And so that allows the approval body to check not only the components and the fire test performance, but they'll also make that review on the Dion as part of the approval.
So the Dion is, for us, we Viking find that really important part of the approval, as you will. So by a third party. Correct.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So then, if we look at the actual content of the document, the structure, there's a lot of very familiar sections. Okay, we start out with talking about the design of the system. Through to installation, guidance for the contractor, into the components, which can and cannot be used, through the water supplies, very important, particularly for water mist, let's say. And
it has also it's kind of structured in accordance with the structure of the standard, for the European standard. So it has that structure. So if somebody not familiar with a sprinkler standard and opens the water mist standard, he or she will recognize it. So
okay. Yeah, and then it ends up with operation and maintenance, and there's some annexes which we'll talk about a little bit later on. So coming up next, we'll dive into the design section, a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the detail of the document, and starting with the design section, as well as some general criteria. I see also in the document that it references other parts of 14972.
Yeah.
What are they covering?
Yeah. So Chris, the 14972 has 17 sections in total, 16 of which are fire test protocols of applications.
Right.
So they're individual test protocols for a set of rules for these applications.
So these are requirements on how to run fire tests for the different applications.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And actually these for us as the industry are familiar. Mm-hmm. We use the content of recognized approval bodies like FM, VDS or LPCB, mm-hmm. and we write them down in the script that the SEN requires from us.
Okay.
Yeah. And what we can see also in the background, there's the table, the design table. Mm-hmm. And what we see is that every design criteria, the area here, is linked to a test protocol.
Right.
Yes.
So I can see that, I see in part one, that will define certain criteria, such as the area of operation. Correct. And the duration. Yeah. But what you're saying then is that the more detailed information like the density and the pressure.
That's depending on the result of the test.
That's coming out of it, right. Yeah. And so that's a different approach, for example, from a sprinkler system. Correct. Which is prescriptive.
Yeah. As we know.
Okay. And that allows that flexibility. Yeah.
And the flexibility then is written down in a DIOM again. Mm-hmm. So every manufacturer has their, the design criteria, how we have to design it, install it, operate and maintain it, written in a DIOM. Okay. And that's part of the approval.
Right. Yeah. So the approval agency will check not only the components and the fire test performance, but they're checking that the DIOM is very clearly specifying all those detailed designs. Obviously, we've had water mist systems on the market for quite some time now. Yeah. What I like about the approach of the SEN committee in this case was that they took that into consideration. Correct. And for those systems that are covering applications that are not in those standards or are not ready yet, in those test protocols, we have an Annex A. Annex A. In part one. And Annex A includes a set of requirements that an approval body needs to meet when they're writing and defining a test protocol for a system. And in our case, I'm very pleased to say that we've been working with VDS along these lines, looking with our Econ Aqua system at the testing that we have done. And really pleased to announce that we have now a VDS approval against EN 14972, Part 1, and this Annex A. Yeah. And that allows us to get the system out, and the market can see that it's fully in accordance with the body of Part 1. Yeah. And that the fire testing was done in accordance with
For which applications can we use this?
Well, Econ Aqua is approved for light hazard, ordinary hazard group 1 risks, and in the OH2 group we have a unique system which is approved for car parks, which also includes dry and pre-action systems. So all of that has now been approved in accordance with the EN.
Very good. Yeah. Yeah, and then there's another thing which we didn't talk about, Chris, just a quickie. There are also components.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, and critical components, we're still working on it. That will be the EN 17450. Mm-hmm. But for now, the requirements are written in the main body of the water mist standard.
So, for example, we could expect at some point a standard for the nozzles, for example. Some of the more critical components will have their own test standards. Yeah. But in the meantime, again, until those are published, the Part 1 requires that the DIOM is very clear in saying which components should be used and how they should be used. Yes. Yeah. Again, allowing the systems to continue to be used in the marketplace, but with this added level of checking and approval. That's correct. Okay, great. Well, next up we're going to look at a little bit the impact of the standard and what we think might happen in the coming years.
Very good.
Okay, so we've looked at a little bit more the detail of the standard, Marcel. Of course, the big question is, when are we going to see this published?
Yeah, that's a good question, Chris. So we are now finalizing it for the last vote, which actually ends 10 September 2020. So it's pretty soon.
Not far.
And you know, if everybody agrees and the vote will be positive in majority, it will be, I think, just before the summer of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're in that final stage where the technical content is done and
Correct.
complete, won't change.
Yeah.
We're now just looking at editorial changes
yeah.
and cleaning it up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well that's good to
That's
see.
very good.
And of course those other parts, the test protocols will come on
Yeah, actually,
that's
a good one. So actually I was talking about the main body. So the design, install and maintenance document. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we looked at the standard. I think it will bring that increased transparency and consistency that we wanted as an industry.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
maybe let's look at each of the main stakeholders and talk about how that might impact them, or this series might impact them. You have a lot of interaction with end users, for example. How do you think this series is going to help them?
So my feeling, Chris, is that for end users, because there's more transparency, you know, they invest in it. So they want to continue their business, and if they spend money in a fire protection system, you know, it needs to work, and it needs to be accepted through the whole chain. So they get their permit to do what they have to do. So I think with this, you know, bundles EN standard with all the applications in there, it will help them for sure to make it whatever they have that is fit for purpose.
Right. And obviously connected very strongly to the end user is the other consultants, the engineers. And what do you think they're going to see?
So the consultants, they add value now. They can add value to the end user. So rather than, you know, having a solution which is defined by, you know, or linked to a manufacturer.
Right. One specific.
High pressure, low pressure. Now they can say it needs to be in accordance with a standard. And also they can make already the pre-selection. So they can, you know, add value in solution, but also add value because now it goes into the market and everybody can respond to it.
So that gives it more choice. You know, we'll start to see specifications, you know, calling for EN 14972 systems, and that allows a bit more choice and flexibility.
And what do you think for the contractor?
Well, for the contractor, I really think the consistency thing that we talked about will be important. Now, you know, we'll have certain prescriptive requirements that are common across all systems, regardless of type and application. And I think that really clears some of the questions up for the contractor. The other part, I think, which is really important, is that they now have something against which they can issue a certificate of completion for the project. So, Mr. End User, here's your package of information, and here is my certificate saying this system is now fully in accordance with with an EN standard, and that will help the handover and completion process.
And also, you know, if you look at the insurance, because they review later on as well, and they are part of the risk. You know, if something is happening, they, you know, financially speaking, they have to support an end user. And you know, when I speak with them, often they get a solution. And they're asking for test data because it's a specific solution from a specific manufacturer. And now when it's in the document, you know, it's already been reviewed. It has, you know, if we do things right, it has an approval, and you know, it's easy for them to accept.
They can just specify, I want this system, and have confidence.
Confidence that it's mitigating the fire risk that's at hand.
Sure.
Hey, and us manufacturer, what's in it for us?
Well, as a manufacturer, that's where the consistency and transparency is important. For us, what's important for us is to have a high level of performance, of course, but also that it's a level playing field across the board. And that's been a little bit of an issue in the water mist market, I would say. And now we can all say, all right, look, we all hit the same performance level, and that's what we want as a manufacturer, and also something against which we can go to the likes of VDS and get an approval. Because that's what the market really wants out of us. So I think we can say that all the stakeholders, all the parts of the industry will benefit from this series. That's great. Okay. Well, thanks, Marcel.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, and we'll see you again soon.